Welcome to Art with Mrs. Cap, where we are going on a journey through the world of art and the many histories and cultures that influence it. Whether you're a kid or a kid at heart, wanting to learn more about the art world, this is the podcast for you. So join us as we journey through art with Mrs. Cap. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at the Harlem Renaissance. Many people often associate the Harlem Renaissance with the literary arts and performing arts, but we're going to be looking specifically at the visual arts of the Harlem Renaissance. Let's go ahead and take a look at the work of art that we are going to be talking about. So this work of art is titled Into Bondage. It is by Aaron Douglas. Aaron Douglas is considered to be the father of African American art. Just as Manet is considered to be the father of modern art, Aaron Douglas is considered to be the father of African American art. It was made in 1936, and it is an oil on canvas. So, what is this work of art about? What is the topic? What is the message that the artist is trying to convey? As we look at this work of art, we see that it is definitely a powerful depiction of enslaved Africans bound for the Americas. How do we know that? Well, let's look at this. As we look at the figures in the foreground, we see shackled figures who are walking off towards the horizon. And as they go towards the horizon, we see against kind of the light of the horizon, we see the silhouette of slave ships on that horizon line. So these shackled figures with, some of this like foliage that's kind of tropical and so forth in the foreground, we see these shackled figures heading towards those ships. And of course, we know when we reflect on history, we know they were heading towards slavery. So that right there tells us a little bit about the location and what's happening. If you know your history and so forth, you know what's happening in this work of art. So we see the shackled figures heading off towards slavery. Their heads are hung low, and it's a very solemn image that we see here as they head towards those slave ships. But what I love about this work of art is that Aaron Douglas didn't just leave it hopeless and solemn and sad, but he added some elements that point to the hope of the future. So even in the midst of this grave image of oppression, we see a message of hope. And how do we see that? Well, if we look to the bottom left, we see this woman with her hands raised up, pointing us upward. Of course, she directs our eye line to the slave ships. And above that, we see a star. But not only is she pointing us to the star, we see this figure, this strong figure, breaking the horizon line, standing with his gaze upward. He doesn't fit the rest of the figures in this scene that he's in line with. His gaze is pointed upward. His head is not down. He's not looking to the slave ships, but he's looking beyond. He's looking at this star that's shooting a beam of light out. Some say this star represents the North Star. Others point to other imagery, the hope of the future, the shining star of the future that's greater than the oppression that lies ahead. So there's a lot of symbolism in this work of art. There's a lot going on and being communicated that was being purposefully communicated, but also leaves it up to the viewer to interpret. And there's many interpretations on some of these elements. So we see he kind of breaches that horizon line. And in doing so, he communicates strength and optimism. Now, we also see another symbolic element being used here. If you look closely, you can see the concentric circles, and those represent the sound, particularly of African and African American song that radiate from a single point on the horizon. This was a common symbolic element that Douglas used in his works to represent that. So he is known for using these concentric circles to represent sound, and specifically to represent the sound of African and African American song. So there's even more symbolism that we see in this work. Now, a little bit about this. This work was part of a series that Douglas was commissioned to do for the Texas Centennial Exposition. The 4 paintings that were part of this series charted the journey of African Americans from slavery to the present, which would have been the 1930s. So it would have charted, slavery through to the Harlem Renaissance time period. So it's fitting that Douglas was chosen for this because of him being considered a cultural phenomenon, and the fact that he promoted African and African American culture as a source of pride and inspiration. He was an obvious choice for this commissioning work of art for these murals. So the hall where these were exhibited in was opened on Juneteenth, which is June 19th, a holiday celebrating the end of slavery, and they were visited by more than 400,000 fairgoers over the course of the 5 months that the exposition was open to the public. So this was a commemoration of abolition, and the mural cycle in particular is served as a critical acknowledgement of African American contribution to state and federal progress. Unfortunately, of the 4 original paintings, only 2 remain. One of those is Into Bondage, and the other one is Aspiration. Aspiration is located in San Francisco today. Into Bondage is located in the Corcoran Collection at the National Gallery of Art. However, at the time of recording this episode, it's not currently on view. Something about a lot of art museums, they may have these works of art in their permanent collection, but they don't always have every single work of art on view. When I've gone to the National Gallery of Art, I've gone, I'm partial to Impressionist work, and I've gone, and I would say every single time I've gone, and I've been quite a few times, there's different works of art on display. So I see different, works by Van Gogh or by, Monet, or, any of those type of artists that are Impressionist or Post-Impressionist, and it's never the same. It's the same with any of these other works of art. They have them in their permanent collection, but they may not be on view. So if that's something you're interested in seeing in person, definitely check out to see if it's on view, or if there's an exposition coming up that will highlight some of these works. Of course, those things are always happening as well. So definitely check it out to see if it is going to be on view when you're visiting. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Be sure to subscribe and check out more episodes as we travel through the world of art and art history to have a better understanding of our own ties to the culture and history of humanity.